Imagine, like, building a global brand from the absolute ground up. But in this specific business model, your entire product is just ultimate boundary-pushing public visibility. Your success literally depends on putting yourself out there in the most raw, exposed way imaginable.
Right, because in that kind of industry, you essentially become the product. I mean, you are the brand, you are the marketing, and you're the commodity all rolled into one.
Exactly. But here's the catch. While the whole world thinks they know everything about you, simply because of how much you share on camera, your actual private life is just a completely locked vault. It's this wild paradox.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've got a great stack of sources today. We are pulling from biographical articles, Wikipedia, Grokipedia, and it's all centered on the really fascinating career trajectory of Laura Jennifer David, who is, of course, much better known to the world as Ariana Jollee.
And you know, it's a super important career to examine, especially if we look at it through a strictly professional lens. Like, this isn't about sensationalism at all.
No, definitely not.
It's really a case study on leveraging early digital marketing, building a distinct personal brand in a highly controversial field, transitioning into directing, and then ultimately adapting to the modern creator economy over like a 2 decades.
Yeah, and that's a vital distinction we need to make right at the top before we get into the timeline. We're looking at the business mechanics of an industry.
Precisely. So for anyone listening, we are keeping the tone strictly informational, neutral, and respectful today.
Right.
We're focusing on her career growth, the business strategy, and the mechanics of media production within the adult entertainment industry. We'll be entirely avoiding any graphic language or explicit details.
Which honestly is exactly where the story gets really interesting anyway. Because the business mechanics she utilized were just way ahead of their time.
Totally.
Let's start with her background. So she was born in 1982 in Long Island, New York. She is of Italian and Russian Jewish descent. And when you look at her early life, her future media savvy actually makes a whole lot of sense.
Right, because of her dad.
Yeah. Her father, Gil David, was a radio personality and a DJ for Long Island's WHLI.
And that background is definitely worth noting. Growing up around broadcasting, you kind of just absorb the realities of performance and timing and audience engagement, even just through osmosis.
Yeah, you see behind the curtain.
Exactly. You learn early on that there is a very distinct line between the performer at the microphone and the actual person at home. It demystifies the whole media landscape.
It totally does.
Yeah.
But what she actually chose to do with that understanding was very much a product of the early internet era. Let's set the scene here. It's March 2003. She's about 20 years old.
Right.
Now, in most traditional entertainment fields at that time, the standard playbook was incredibly rigid. You pack up, you move to California, you get some headshots, you find an agent, and then you just wait in line hoping some gatekeeper casts you.
Right, the classic studio system approach. You basically beg for permission to work.
Yeah, exactly. But she didn't do that. She bypassed the gatekeepers entirely. She built a homemade website to promote her own solo content online. And okay, let's unpack this for a second, because we really need to think of this early website as being like an early tech startup.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of pitching herself to casting agents with literally zero leverage, she essentially built a minimum viable product, an MVP, just to prove her market value.
What's fascinating here is the sheer initiative this required. We really have to emphasize the technical and financial hurdles of doing something like that in 2003.
Yeah, this wasn't just making a social media profile.
Not at all. I mean, we aren't talking about modern platforms where everything is done for you. In 2003, broadband was only just starting to replace dial-up.
Right.
So hosting digital video media on your own domain was exorbitantly expensive because the bandwidth costs were just massive.
Yeah, and you had to figure out HTML. You had to source high-risk payment processors to actually make any money off the site.
Yeah, exactly. And you had to drive your own traffic without any of the modern social media algorithms we have today.
It was incredibly heavy lifting. But, you know, that entrepreneurial drive paid off perfectly for her. By putting her content out there directly, she proved there was a real audience and a market value for her brand. She essentially generated her own initial momentum.
Right. She proved the concept.
Yeah. So instead of going to the major studios and asking for a chance, the studios came to her. Her direct proof of concept led directly to her being recruited by a production manager at Anabolic Video, which was a major studio out in California.
Right, and if we run with your startup analogy, that was basically her Series A funding.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving from New York to the San Fernando Valley, which was the absolute epicenter of the industry, and signing with LA Direct Models was a highly strategic transition.
It really was.
She took the equity she built up in her independent venture, and she used it to secure major agency backing. She entered a full-time, structured professional trajectory.
So she proved her value, got the representation, and essentially entered the major leagues. But once she was actually in the San Fernando Valley, she had to differentiate herself because, the market was completely flooded with talent.
Right, she couldn't just be another performer.
Exactly. She had to establish a brand in an incredibly high-intensity media environment. And rather than doing the standard, highly polished, narrative-driven productions, she quickly pivoted to what's known as the gonzo style of mature entertainment.
Yeah, let's break down the mechanics of that specific genre for a moment.
Please do.
The gonzo style is defined by being raw, unscripted, and very documentary style. It usually involves handheld cameras, direct interaction with the lens, and breaking the fourth wall constantly.
So it's less about the cinematic polish.
Right. It's not about high-budget sets or intricate scripted plots at all. It's about intense physicality, a really relentless pacing, and a sense of just unvarnished reality.
And that requires an unbelievable amount of physical endurance. And that endurance actually became her defining brand trait.
Oh, for sure.
The sheer volume of her output is a massive part of this business case study. The sources note she appeared in over 400 titles in just her first few years alone.
That's staggering.
It is. She eventually amassed over 860 scene credits in her career. She really carved out a specific niche in large-scale group productions, which demanded a level of stamina that, frankly, most people simply couldn't sustain.
Well, from a purely operational perspective, volume and reliability are massive assets to any production company.
Right.
In the gonzo market, production schedules are incredibly tight, margins are very slim. So a performer who can consistently deliver high-energy content, handle really complex, unscripted scenarios without needing constant resets, and do all of that over hundreds of scenes.
They become indispensable.
Exactly. They become invaluable to a studio's bottom line. She effectively cornered the market on high-endurance reliability.
Which leads perfectly into the ultimate example of that endurance. And honestly, this is one of the most logistically chaotic projects I've read about in a long time.
Oh, the Prague shoot.
Yes. In 2005, she took on this massive project with Devil's Film, shot on location in Prague. This was a large-scale group production that was originally planned for 50 male performers.
Right.
But as things often go on overseas shoots, the logistics kind of shifted on the ground, and it ended up resulting in 65 performers.
The logistics of a set like that are just staggering to even think about.
Exactly. Let's talk about how you even manage that. We were talking about coordinating unscripted movement, spatial awareness from multiple handheld cameras, continuity, and just basic crowd control.
All while maintaining a high-energy performance.
Yes. But I have to ask you, from an industry and brand building perspective, why would a performer voluntarily subject themselves to such an extreme, almost impossibly demanding project?
Well, it really comes down to market dominance. By 2005, the barrier to entry in mature entertainment was dropping rapidly due to the proliferation of cheaper digital video cameras.
Right, anyone could film.
Exactly. So to maintain top-tier status and command premium rates, you had to do things that literally no one else could or would do. Undertaking a project of that magnitude isn't just about the physical performance, it's a massive, calculated marketing stunt.
Ah, I see.
It generates intense industry press, it dominates the fan discussions, and it completely cements a reputation that cannot easily be challenged by newer, greener competitors.
But doing that didn't just generate press, right?
Yeah.
It generated some significant professional blowback, too.
Mm-hmm.
The sources mentioned she faced serious pushback from within the U.S. industry over this specific Prague project.
Yeah. And to understand why, we have to look at the institutional mechanics of the industry at that time.
Okay.
The San Fernando Valley had spent years establishing very specific, self-regulated safety and testing protocols to keep productions domestic and functioning smoothly. There were strict routine health panels and standardized safety measures that every major California studio adhered to.
So by taking this massive project out to Eastern Europe, she was essentially bypassing that entire closed ecosystem.
Precisely. Filming in Prague, outside of those standard California safety protocols, particularly with 65 international performers whose testing histories might not perfectly align with U.S. standards.
Yeah, that would be an issue.
It was viewed by many in the domestic establishment as a rogue, incredibly high-risk move. It really ruffled feathers because it threatened the U.S. industry's attempts at standardized self-regulation.
Wow.
It highlighted the intense tension between an individual pushing boundaries for personal brand building and the institutional safety standards of the wider industry.
It really paints a picture of someone who is willing to take massive calculated risks just to dominate her specific niche. And she certainly did dominate it. If you're enjoying the vibe, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends. It really helps us out. So if we look at this rapid, intense output, over 400 titles in a few years, massive group productions, flying across the world for these controversial shoots, the natural next question has to be about sustainability.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sustaining that level of physical output is grueling. It burns people out so fast. The physical toll of something like the Prague shoot directly forces a strategic pivot if you actually want to survive in the business.
Right. You can't be the core laborer forever. You eventually have to move into management. You have to step behind the camera to ensure your own career longevity.
But wait, hold on. I need to challenge the timeline here.
That's right. Go for it.
The sources say she signed a directing contract with Anarchy Films and Python Pictures in 2004. And her directorial debut was a film called The Narcissist.
Right.
That is just 1 year into her professional career. She was roughly 22 years old at the time. Why pivot to directing so early if she was already making a killing on camera? Doesn't that risk diluting her main brand right as it's taking off?
It's a great question, and it actually reinforces that tech startup analogy you made earlier.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A smart founder knows that early revenue is great, but long-term equity requires owning the actual operational infrastructure.
Ah, I see.
By signing those directing deals so early, she wasn't diluting her brand at all. She was vertically integrating it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Being a performer in a gonzo shoot means you are right there in the middle of the lighting arrays. You're seeing the camera angles, the pacing. You see exactly what works and what doesn't on a technical level.
You're learning on the job.
Exactly. She clearly absorbed that operational knowledge immediately and then leveraged it into a directing deal before the physical burnout could even begin to set in.
That is so smart. She didn't wait to be asked. She just asserted her value. And here's where it gets really interesting, because there is a specific story in the sources that illustrates exactly how she operated on set.
Right, the Mayhem story.
Yeah. It involves the Young Bung series for a studio called Mayhem. Originally, Jollee was just cast as a performer for this shoot, but the original director, Lauren Phoenix, ended up walking off the production abruptly over some creative differences.
Which is usually a complete death sentence for a daily shoot. Time is money, and a halted set just bleeds the budget dry.
Exactly. But instead of letting the shoot fall apart and everyone going home unpaid, Jollee stepped up. She took the reins and she directed it herself to completion.
Oh.
She knew where the light should be, she knew the pacing because she had been the subject so many times, and she completely salvaged the production.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that moment is a masterclass in seizing opportunity. It's one thing to have a directing contract with your name on it, right? But it's entirely another thing to step into a leadership vacuum on a chaotic, unscripted set and successfully steer the ship. And it wasn't just a one-off thing either. Over the course of her career, she directed around 41 titles.
It's a huge catalog.
It is, and we have to acknowledge how significant that is. She brought a female perspective and editorial control to the directorial chair in a heavily male-dominated field.
Right.
She used her deep hands-on experience to focus on empowerment through creative control. She wasn't just a subject in front of the lens anymore, you know. She was actually defining the narrative.
She was calling the shots. And the industry ecosystem completely validated her dual threat status. The accolades just poured in.
They really did.
She won a 2005 AVN award, which is essentially the highest industry recognition available for a large-scale group production called Orgy World 7. She also took home consecutive XRCO awards in 2005 and 2006 for her highly uninhibited performances, and she was receiving multiple AVN nominations for Female Performer of the Year.
And her impact rippled out into mainstream media analysis as well, which is rare.
Oh, right. The Chris Hedges book.
Exactly. She was prominently featured and interviewed in Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Chris Hedges' 2009 book, Empire of Illusion. the end of literacy and the triumph of spectacle.
That's a huge deal.
It is. Hedges used her perspective to explore the broader cultural and personal dimensions of the industry. That crossover shows she was recognized not just as a high-volume performer, but as a highly articulate, thoughtful commentator on the media landscape she inhabited.
Which brings us to what I think is the most fascinating contradiction of her entire story.
Yeah.
The paradox of the private vault.
Yeah, this is wild.
Here's a woman who is winning awards for ultimate physical exposure. She's the subject of sociological books. She is directing and starring in hundreds of raw, unscripted films. And yet, despite being in the most exposed profession imaginable, her actual private life is practically a ghost town in the sources.
It really is.
There are no leaked family dramas. There are no reality show spin-offs capitalizing on her personal life. There are just these really brief passing mentions of dating a fellow performer named Joey Ray and a marriage to a producer named Chico Wang.
And that's basically it.
That's it. No deep details whatsoever.
It is a remarkable feat of compartmentalization, especially considering the era she was working in. In an industry built entirely on the illusion of intimacy and ultimate access, she successfully walled off her actual authentic self.
Yeah, she drew a very hard line.
The Ariana Jollee that the public interacted with was a highly constructed, extremely durable corporate brand, but Laura Jennifer David, the woman actually operating that brand, remained completely inaccessible.
And she knew exactly when to power that brand down, too. According to the records, she effectively retired from the industry around 2012. She quietly bowed out after a decade of intense, high-volume work.
But the story doesn't actually end in 2012, which is what makes her career arc so compelling for a modern business study.
Right, it's come back.
Yeah. A full decade later, in late 2022, she returned. But she adapted to a completely transformed digital landscape. She returned to independent creator platforms, utilizing social media and direct-to-fan outreach through 2023.
So no studios.
Exactly. No gatekeepers, just direct monetization.
So what does this all mean? Let's really dive into the economics of that, because the contrast between her early career and her return is wild. In 2005, she needed a studio to handle the massive logistical overhead, right?
Exactly. Let's compare the two eras. In the early 2000s, even if you started on your own website like she did, scaling up meant you had to partner with major entities like Anabolic or Devil's Film.
Because they had the resources.
Right. Because you needed their physical DVD distribution networks, you needed their massive server farms for video streaming, their legal teams to navigate international shoots, and of course, their marketing budgets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The studio absorbed the massive overhead, sure, but they also took the lion's share of the profits and dictated those grueling schedules. It was very much a studio-dominated era.
But then you fast forward to the 2020s.
And the technology has completely disintermediated the studios. Bandwidth is cheap now. Distribution is global and instant via smartphones.
Right.
Platforms now allow creators to own their distribution entirely. By returning in 2022 via the creator economy, she was able to fully capture the financial value of her established legacy brand without having to split it with a production company.
Wow.
To go back to your analogy, she took her company private again. She retained 100% of the equity and controlled her own production schedule. She evolved from a highly valued studio asset into a completely independent enterprise.
It really is a masterclass in reading the market over a long timeline. When you look at the entire 20-year journey, the strategic pivots are just so clear.
They really are.
You have a 20-year-old in Long Island recognizing that a self-coded homemade website was the ultimate workaround to industry gatekeepers. Then, she navigates the intense heights, the sheer physical endurance, and the chaotic logistics of gonzo media production.
Yeah.
And when the physical toll threatens her longevity, she doesn't just blindly push through. She recognizes the burnout factor and seizes directorial control to ensure her survival and her creative input.
Right.
And finally, she understands exactly how to leverage the modern creator economy to own her production outright. Regardless of what you think of the specific industry she worked in, the business acumen required to survive, adapt, and remain relevant over 2 decades in such a volatile space is just undeniable.
It truly is. She navigated massive technological disruptions. I mean, from dial-up to broadband to mobile, intense physical demands, and completely shifting cultural norms, all while maintaining absolute ironclad control over what the public was allowed to see of her real life.
And honestly, considering everything we've unpacked today, it leaves us with something pretty profound to think about.
It does. This raises an important question. In our current era, everyone from corporate executives to freelance graphic designers is constantly urged to share every minor detail of their personal lives online in order to build an authentic brand.
Right, oversharing is practically mandatory now.
Exactly. We are told repeatedly by marketing gurus that oversharing is the absolute key to audience connection. So, what can we truly learn from someone whose entire multi-decade career was based on absolute, unprecedented public exposure, yet who successfully managed to keep her true personal self completely hidden from the world?
It really forces you to rethink what it actually means to be visible online today. Because as we saw with her career, you can build an incredibly lucrative global brand on ultimate exposure, let the audience think they have total access, and still keep the vault to your actual private life perfectly locked.